I'm Jennifer Springsteen. I attend Star King School for the Ministry, seeking my Master's of Divinity. I participated in the G2U course Women and Gender in Jewish and Islamic Texts and Practice in the spring of 2021. Inspired by Professors Mahjabeen Dalla and Naomi Seidman, the idea of whether women see themselves as God's co-creators arrived as a spark, like all beginnings. I thought, what was it that I felt when I was pregnant and nursing? I know it was a deep connection to God and to all mothers who had come before me. I wondered as I read exegesis on the Hebrew Bible and Quran if that spark, that divine feeling of connection to all creation, had been felt by others. I must admit, though, the more I spoke to others and read, I found myself more puzzled and stumped than when I began. And I know research is like that. We have an inspiration and set out to validate it through the proofs of others, only to stumble through pitfalls and disappointments before reassessing our goal. Obviously, my biggest setback was in the resounding no's. I got to my question of whether others had felt that they were God's co-creators. I'd heard from a few of my interviewees that felt a little new agey. And while our conversations about mothering and God were far from negative, they were joyous and beautiful. I felt a little bit disconnected from my thesis, and I worry that disconnection came across in my final project, leaving my thesis a little jumbled. But I've been turning this apple over for some time now, and perhaps it isn't co-creation that I felt or that I longed to find in the words of other women during my research. Perhaps it was a desire to hear discussions of the sacred and direct connection with pregnancy, childbirth, and childcare, the same way that I felt its holy presence so close. I want the conversations to continue to unfold because I welcome this breaking open mother love. It's a holy gift. Where I found the most clarity on the topic of women feeling a deep co-creative impact was in the poetic writings of women. And I'd love to share some of those with you here. Alana Pardes writes, Eve's position in the rank of creators allows her to become God's partner in the work of creation. And Fatima Keshavaras writes, ultimately, we were all Marys, impregnated with the seed of God and potentially entitled to a Jesus of our own if we learned to allow the pregnancy to go through its full term. Mershida Veracorda writes, when the mother discovers God within herself by diving deeply into herself, she touches the unity of her whole being, and her love is unlimited. The mother's love is like a river running pure and progressing onward as she relives the developmental stages of infancy with her child. In her poem, Propaganda Poem, Maybe for Some Young Mamas, Alicia Susskind Ostraker writes, oh, young mamas, no matter what your age is, you were born when you give birth to a baby. You start over. But a baby, any baby, your baby, is the most perfect human thing you can ever touch. Translucent. And I want you to think about touching, the pleasure of touching and being touched by this most perfect thing, this pear blossom, this mouth, these leafy hands, these genitals like petals, a warm scalp resting against your cheek, fruit's warm beginning. A woman's sorrow is acceptable. A deodorized, sanitized, sterilized antiperspirant, grinning, efficient woman is certainly acceptable. Who can tolerate the power of a woman close to a child, riding our tides into the sand dunes of the public spaces? So I ask you, isn't that why even strangers reach bug-eyed for the protruding belly of a pregnant woman? It is the mysterious power Hagar had over Sarah. The only way to identify with it is to have it for oneself. If only God would grant that wish. And God grants that wish over and over and over. Thank you for listening.